Hello, my name is Eric Horst, and my film opening was for The Redeemed, a Christopher Nolan and film noir-inspired crime drama. The first question I will answer in this critical reflection is how does my project use or challenge conventions, and how does it represent social groups or issues? The genre of my movie opening is drama and its style is film noir. Although most film noirs typically use a more historical setting, such as the 1940s, due to potential difficulties adapting that time period alongside the lack of necessity of it for the plot I envisioned, me and my group decided that it would be best to just set it within the present day. The setting is still rough and harsh, as is aligned with the film noir style, and our decision to film in black and white further connects us with that style. As it is a drama film, we made this film to be serious and present reasonable arguments and conflicts as is typical of the genre, but I will go more into that during question two. One thing in our film which sets it apart from the typical film noir dark grittiness is the potential of hope through the character of Rachel Nolan. The two protagonists of my movie opening are rather cliche characters within the crime drama genre. Jamie Cromwell is the jaded detective with trauma who is unwilling to take on a new partner after some unknown tragedy befell his last one, and Rebecca Nolan is a hopeful new recruit. Many typical versions of the hopeful new recruit characterize them as wholly naive and incompetent. And although Rachel Nolan is slightly naive in her views, she is competent, and she is the character who ends up dealing with Slater Buckley who is the antagonist by the conclusion of the film. Overall, these somewhat cliché characters clearly establish the film's genre. However, the characters exist beyond these roles as a subversion of them. The film opening begins with Jamie Cromwell trying to catch Callaway Martin, establishing Callaway Martin as a potential antagonist of the film. However, Callaway Martin is then subsequently killed. This shocks the viewer alongside the character, with the character who was initially established as as a potential antagonist simply being killed by the actual one. This is both a subversion of trope and utilization of it, as plot points such as this have become more common in recent years. This establishes the pattern which the rest of the potential film would follow, with other such people being used and then killed, with these crimes leading upon along the main character, which is somewhat of a trope from which I took inspiration from various depictions of Sherlock Holmes and Moriarty. Calloway Martin showing regret and not wanting to continue a life of crime in the removed scene 2 also introduces Slater Buckley's misconception, which I will explain on the next slide, and is further developed later into the potential movie. The planned conclusion of the film is a major part of the way in which the film both used and challenged conventions. The film would conclude with Slater Buckley recognizing the flaws in his belief, due to being confronted by Rachel Nolan with the efforts that those he killed had been making to redeem themselves, which is a rather typical ending, with the antagonist realizing the protagonist's beliefs are somewhat more correct than theirs. However, what we do differently with it is that Slater Buckley has not fully changed. He has not fully accepted the beliefs. He recognizes that he was wrong in many cases, but not wrong in some, such as the person who kidnapped Rachel Nolan. Overall, Slater hasn't fully changed, but accepts stopping and monitoring Rachel and Jamie as to watch and see if they can fully change his mind, or if his beliefs are unnecessary evil. For more clarity on the conclusion and its direct workings, refer to my blog post from January 28th. Due to the crime drama nature of the film, a major topic of the film is crime and the state of criminals. Slater Buckley and Rebecca Nolan act as opposing viewpoints on this, with their respective beliefs being that criminals can't be redeemed and that everyone can be redeemed. The film ends leaning more towards Rebecca Nolan's side for recognizing the flaws with such a universal statement. For the film opening specifically, this was introduced via the conversation between Callaway Martin and Slater Buckley in scene 3, with the line, I'm giving your life purpose, something it hasn't had since you turned to a life of crime. And also in the removed scene 2, which illustrates Callaway Martin's efforts towards redemption. Overall, on the social issues of crime, the film presents both viewpoints and determines that redemption is possible, but must be tempered with reality. In regards to criminals as a social group, it shows the diversity of them, with some simply being pulled into the crime by external circumstances, while others cherish the evil, and thus those who want to be redeemed can be redeemed, while there are others who are content with the way that they are. The second question, which my critical analysis is going to answer is how does my project engage with audiences and how would it be distributed as a real media text? Drama as a genre is a rather vast genre, and even within the subgenre of crime dramas, there's still great diversity in the audiences. Our target audience is adults, as is typical of the drama audience due to its investigation into themes and complex topics. As stated within the prior section, the film opening both utilizes and subverts the conventions of the genre, which is typically good for a film to do. In regards to the film noir style, we also in many ways conform to the style while introducing slight changes into it, as Steve Neal's genre theory recommends. We conform due to the black and white filming alongside dark tone, but the more hopeful ending alongside character roles are more different than the classical film noir. As is also typical of the drama genre, my intention was to make the audience feel connection with the story and themes, allowing the story to stretch onto the real world and leave a lasting impact on viewers. As this would be a drama film, it would be shown or shared in a more official way than some social media platform. So in order to facilitate the serious audience and tone of the film, it would probably either be a theatrical release or a film festival-based release. The third question, which my critical analysis will answer, is how did this project help develop my production skills? When we started this project, I had a slight idea for a crime film based upon an activity which we had done earlier in the year. After hearing more about typical media studies projects, me and my group determined that it would make sense to do a crime drama as the other main genre we were considering was crime thriller, and due to both the prevalence of thrillers as project submissions, as well as a deeper understanding of the thriller drama, we decided against that genre. I had a clear vision for scenes 2 and 3 alongside the characters of Slither Buckley and Calloway Martin, and another group member came up with the idea for Jamie Cromwell. Later that month, we were assigned to produce a Freitag pyramid and get a deeper understanding of the plot as a whole. That was when Slater Buckley fully came into being as an anti-hero or antagonist rather than a villain, and Rachel Nolan was introduced into the plot. Then we moved into writing the screenplay itself. We had a clear vision of the 4 scenes, so we distributed the scenes with me writing scenes 1 and 2. After we finished our first draft, I read over the other scenes and felt as though the scenes did not correspond with our current understandings of the characters and the roles which they would play. So rewrote the scenes with the permission of my other group members. Overall, this project has given me a deep understanding of the creation of characters and the organization of plot, which has elevated my appreciation of media as well as increased my capacity to produce other independent stories. I acted as the director on this project, and that was a very interesting undertaking. I reached out to my friends and other people I knew who did theater to act in the film opening, as did the other people in my group. However, most of the actors recommended by my group mates did not get back to us, so we ended up using mostly the actors I invited. As the director, I also asked my team members for locations where we could film, as I was not knowledgeable in the on the St. Augustine area where both of them lived and we planned to film. After getting some recommendations from the other team members, I went out and found filming sites suitable to our needs. When we were filming, I acted as a stage director, organizing where people would go and where the camera would be positioned. Overall, acting as director on this project assisted with my organizational and management skills, while also gaining an appreciation for the effort which goes into directing a film. I started this project by telling my other group members that I would take a larger role within the planning and behind the scenes phase because I was not as interested in acting, as I had very little experience and was rather self-conscious about it. However, as we approached filming, we had repeated issues with casting. Various people which we had requested to act in our movie pulled out at the last minute, and the other group member who was going to play Calloway Martin broke his leg and was unable to film when we were planning on filming. So he changed from playing Calloway Martin to playing Jamie Cromwell in later scenes. With my other team member having trouble being available and finding other actors who could work with our schedule, I took on the role of Calloway Martin to ensure that we would still be well represented in the film and we could start filming immediately instead of continuing to delay our filming starts. Through the experience of acting, I feel as though I've grown slightly more competent in acting in general, as well as memorizing, or at least roughly remembering the concepts of a script. Over the span of filming and late development, we had some creative shifts from my initial vision, such as scene 2 and the drone shot being cut. These shots, these shots could have improved, but the film, however, the removal of them increased the brevity and the specificness of the film. So it's an interesting shift in it. And it also allowed me to realize the necessity of creative flexibility in a project such as this. Overall, it was a very interesting experience acting in this film. And while I do feel like my skills have improved and I feel more confident in them, I still do not feel fully confident in acting. The fourth and final question, which I will consider with this creative analysis, is how did I integrate technology into this project? One way I incorporated technology into the product was with the planning of the project. We wrote the script in Word and planned our meetings in Excel. Doing it in these formats allowed for online connections between the group. On the point of these online connections, due to me living rather far from the other group members and us not having enough time to complete all the tasks during class, most of our contacts discussing the project were done via online message platforms. Technology was more utilized within the execution of the product rather than its planning. We filmed on iPhones so as to have consistent file types, and we were going to use other technical elements during filming. Even late drafts of the script and scene planning mention a drone shot, allowing for a transition between scenes 3 and 4. However, due to issues with our filming location, we were sadly not able to use that. Also, for scene 3, we planned on bringing a sunset lamp in order to get the lighting that we required. However, when we got on site that night, we realized that the light level we had was the perfect amount that we wanted, and so we did not need the sunset lamp. We also used post-production software on the iPhone in order to change our recordings from color into black and white. I did not take a large role in the editing process. However, we edited using iMovie and I found some sound effects for the film opening via epidemicsounds.com. We finished the project by publishing it to youtube.com. Here is my works cited page of images which I used in this presentation. And thank you for watching my critical reflection.